Most people retreat when pressure comes. Most people grow silent when the cost becomes too high. History is filled with voices that faded the moment opposition arrived. But there was one man whose voice only grew louder when the world pushed back. The more danger he faced, the more boldly he spoke. The more enemies gathered, the more clearly he stood. He was not driven by ambition or pride. He was driven by something far deeper, something the world had never fully seen before. His name was Jesus, and he never backed down. Jesus walked into the most religiously charged environment of his time and challenged the most powerful leaders of his generation, the scribes, the Pharisees, the teachers of the law. These were men of enormous influence, men who controlled how people understood God, men who could destroy a reputation with a single word. Most people avoided them. Most people lowered their heads and stayed quiet. Jesus did the opposite. He stood in the temple courts, surrounded by crowds and critics alike, and he spoke with an authority that no one could explain away. He said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." Not whispered, declared. He never protected his reputation at the expense of truth. While others carefully guarded their social standing, Jesus guarded something more valuable. He understood that real freedom begins where honesty is no longer afraid. But his boldness was never cold or distant. It was wrapped in something that confused his enemies even more than his words: compassion. Jesus moved toward the people that society had decided were not worth moving toward. A woman caught in adultery, dragged before a crowd ready to condemn her. Tax collectors despised by their own communities. The poor, the sick, children pushed aside in a world that measured worth by status. He sat with sinners at their tables. He reached out and touched lepers that no one else would go near. He stopped for the forgotten when everyone else kept walking. Every act of mercy made his enemies angrier. Every moment of grace became another reason for the powerful to plot against him. Yet he never stopped, not once, because to him every person carried a worth that no social system could cancel. Then came one of the most striking moments of his entire ministry. The temple in Jerusalem, a place designed for prayer, for connection with God, had been turned into something else entirely. Merchants had set up tables, money changers were exploiting worshippers, the sacred had been buried under commerce and corruption. Most people who saw it simply looked away. It was too complicated, too risky, too political to confront. Jesus walked in and confronted it directly. He refused to stay silent in the face of something wrong simply because everyone else had accepted it. He refused to let reverence become an excuse for passivity. This was not reckless anger. This was the courage of someone who understood that silence in the face of corruption is its own form of agreement. Even when every eye was watching, he chose truth over comfort. Then came the night that tested everything. In the Garden of Gethsemane, under an open sky, Jesus knelt and prayed while Roman torches flickered in the distance. He knew what was coming: betrayal from someone he had trusted, arrest by those he had never harmed, a trial built on lies, suffering beyond what words can carry, the cross. He was not unaware. He was not caught off guard. He saw it all clearly, and he chose to continue walking forward. He could have disappeared into the night. He had done it before when crowds tried to force his hand. But this time was different. This time he stayed. Not because he felt no weight, but because his mission was greater than his fear. His love for humanity was stronger than his instinct for self-preservation. That decision, made in the quiet darkness of a garden, would echo through every generation that followed. The cross rose against a darkened sky, and the world thought it was watching a defeat. But 3 days later, something happened that no army, no empire, and no grave could contain. The tomb was empty, the story was not over, it had only just begun. Jesus never backed down, not because he was without fear, but because his purpose was anchored in something unshakable. His courage was not the absence of pain, it was the decision to keep going despite it. That courage changed the course of human history. That love rewrote what was possible. And that example still stands today, still calling, still challenging, still asking each of us the same quiet question. When the cost gets high, when the pressure builds, when silence feels safer, what will you choose?